Okay, hello, my name is Josh Beck. I'm a technology teacher in San Antonio, Texas. I work with a program called IMAC, which stands for Interactive Media Applications at Kruger. And this is lesson 6 in our series on the Blender. What we did last time is in lesson 5, through lesson 5, is we created a camera, a cube, a sphere, and a lamp. Now, if you click K on the camera, you can see that the keyframes are all selected there. I've hit the K button. And the goal of lesson 5 was to create nice, even keyframes all the way around, which you can see I do not have with this project. Make sure that you have credit for lesson 5. You may want to save lesson 5 as a different file name if you're in my class, because what we're about to do is we're going to delete the camera, and you need to have credit for having that nice, smooth camera with the keyframes all set. So make sure you have that in a separate file or whatever you need to do. If you have credit, great. What we're going to do is we're going to delete the camera, and then I'm going to delete the cube. Okay, so now what we've got left is we've got a sphere. All right. What we're going to do with this sphere is I'm going to click Shift-D, and I'm going to duplicate the object. Shift-D, take it out. I'm going to do it again. Shift-D to duplicate the object. Shift-D, okay. Shift-D, and Shift-D. So now I have 6 spheres. I'm going to grab that one, put it in. They don't have to be perfect. These lessons are more about function than they are form. I'm going to click Shift-D, and I'm going to move one sphere right to the center. All right, so now I've got these 7 spheres all clustered up together. The next part of this lesson involves just adding simple colors. Now with Blender you can add materials that make objects look like glass, look like metal. You can specify a whole range of variables when you're working with materials, but right now we're just going to add a simple color to each one of our spheres. And to do that, you make sure that your editing tab is selected. I'm going to bring the mouse up and down to where it says editing. You can also click F9 on your keyboard to get to that. And it says MAT. I have 0 materials and I've got 0 selected. Okay, so I'm going to click New to make a new material. And that brings up a little color palette. Now I've got 1 material and I'm working with number 1. And I'm going to click the color palette and I'm just going to go ahead and assign it a color red. And as you can see, my sphere now turns red. So I'm going to right click and select each object. I'm going to click New on the Materials button, and then I'm going to assign it a different color. Now that's going to be for a grade. Okay, everyone in my class has to have a sphere, all right, with a different color, and you have to have 7 spheres, and they have to be aligned in the configuration that you see here on the screen. All right, so I'm almost done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a simple animation. Let's go ahead and make this one white. Let's see if I can get it down there white. There we go. Not quite. We'll leave it gray, that's fine. And how about a light blue? You know what? I'm not going to leave that gray. I can't handle it. We're going to move up to... there we go. Got to have some color, right? Okay, so now we've got 7 spheres, and each one has a different color. Okay, that's for credit. You got that? You're going to get a grade at the end of the week. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create an animation out of these spheres. We're going to make all of them move together based on the action of another object. Okay, so I'm going to take the cursor, and I'm going to position it out away from my object. And I'm going to choose Add, and I'm going to go to Empty. Now, empty objects are interesting. Empty objects cannot be seen by the camera, but the actions or the properties that they exhibit can be mapped to other objects in your animation. And in this case, we're going to animate this empty, and then we're going to assign that animation to these 7 spheres. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go keyframe. Make sure you're in keyframe 1. I'm going to hit the I button to insert a keyframe, and I'm going to choose Scale this time because I want to lock the scale, and we're going to create an animation that involves scale. And I'm going to choose the S button, and I'm going to size it up, and I'm going to go to keyframe 30. Oops. Now I'm going to scale it up, I'm going to hit I. I'm going to choose scale. I'm going to go to keyframe 60. I'm going to scale it down. All right, I'm going to hit I. I'm going to lock the scale to that keyframe. I'm going to go to keyframe. I'm going to go to 90. I'm going to choose scale. We're going to scale it back up again. I'm going to hit I. I'm going to lock the scale. And we're going to go to keyframe 120. We're going to hit S to scale, and we're going to bring this empty back down again. I'm going to choose I. I'm going to lock the scale. Okay, so if I go to keyframe 1, all right, and I hit the animation button, you can see that my empty now has this pulsating animation where it gets bigger and then becomes smaller several times. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to shift, and I'm going to right-click each one of my spheres so that they are all selected. All right, now watch this. This is a really important concept when it comes to the Blender, and that's the concept of the active object. Okay, so I have all of my objects selected. Watch what happens when I click the empty. It turns a brighter pink. If I were to select the top sphere, watch the outline of the top sphere. It turns a brighter pink. It's subtle. You wouldn't even notice it, I don't think, unless you were really looking for the active object relationship. But if you have multiple objects selected, the one that is the brightest is the active object, and that's important. So in this case, we're going to make sure that our empty is a brighter pink than the other objects. Okay, now in order to parent this object to our spheres, we're going to click Control P, make parent, OK. And now we've mapped that animation to our spheres, but you're going to find out here that it's not exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to click Alt A. All right. Now, you see they move up and down. Take a look. They move away from our original point. This sphere up here doesn't just scale, it moves up, and the whole thing kind of moves. All right, and it's not exactly what we want, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to break that parent relationship by selecting all of our objects, and we're going to click, instead of Control P this time, Alt P. We're going to choose Clear Parent. Once again, we're back to where we started, where the empty is the only object that's moving. Okay. So this next concept is a really important one when doing animation. What we're going to do is we're going to take this empty object, we're going to snap it to the center of this particular cluster of spheres, and then we're going to set up that parent-child association. So I'm going to select the center sphere by itself, and I'm going to choose on the keyboard Shift S. All right, now what that does is it's the snap selection, and in this case I'm going to snap the cursor to the selection. So the cursor now goes to our selected object, and you can see it jump to our center sphere. Now I'm going to select the empty, and I'm going to choose Shift S, and I'm going to choose Selection to Cursor. All right, you're going to use, that is one that you use all the time. You use Shift S, you put the cursor somewhere, then you select an object you want to move, you use Shift S, and you snap the object to the cursor. Okay, and that's a typical series of moves that I find I'm using all the time. All right, so I'm going to hit Z, and I'm going to kick it into wireframe mode, and I'm going to select all of my objects. Now that bright pink stands out when you're in wireframe mode. And I'm going to make sure that my empty is the active object, okay? And when the empty is brighter pink than your spheres, and the empty is in the center, you can choose Control P, make parent. All right, and now let's take a look at what we've got. All right, now they all move uniformly and pulsate in the center. Okay, and that concludes Lesson 6, using the empty object and creating a parent-child relationship within Blender.